And what we've said is if you are, in fact, serious about North Korea being a normal nation, then you've got to start changing your behavior. And that starts with the basic principle of denuclearizing the Korean peninsula. Now, am I optimistic that there's going to be a major strategic shift in North Korea's attitudes anytime soon? Probably not. But what I am confident about is that working with Japan, working with the Republic of Korea, and working with China and other interested parties in the region, that we can continue to apply more and more pressure on North Korea so that at some juncture they end up taking a different course. In the meantime, they're dangerous. And we have to make sure that we are guarding against any provocations getting out of hand. This is one of the reasons why the alliance is so important and collective self-defense is so important. But we are not surprised when they engage in irresponsible behavior. That's been their pattern for the last couple of decades. And what we have to do is to continue to try to contain and mitigate the potential damage. That this behavior has and continue to put pressure on them so that we can see a shift. And China's participation in pushing the DPRK in a different direction is critically important as well. They have not only an opportunity but I think a security interest and a broader interest in a peaceful resolution to what has been a generation-long conflict and is the most destabilizing. Dangerous situation in all of the Asia-Pacific region. Prime Minister Abe, as interpreted. First of all, I would like to state the following: the Japan-U.S. alliance is unwavering. And it's indispensable to maintain the Asia-Pacific region peaceful and stable. The Japan-U.S. alliance and the relationship and the strengthening thereof is very beneficial. And to strengthen our bilateral relationship, you have tremendous enthusiasm, I believe. In that. And your enthusiasm and the United States is what we place our confidence in. And in the talks between us today, that confidence became even stronger. This is something that I wished to mention to you. And the alliance between our two countries in order to strengthen this, or if we strengthen this. This is not applying pressure to other countries or intimidating other countries. This is for the peace and stability of the region and to strengthen this and to make this region a law-abiding region. Changes of the status quo based on intimidation and coercion will not be condoned. We want to make this a peaceful region which values laws. And in doing this, strengthening of our bilateral alliance is extremely important. On this point, I fully trust President Obama. The reporter has mentioned the situation in Ukraine. In The Hague, the G7 meeting took place. And President Obama exerted strong leadership, and the G7 was united in its approach toward Russia. Annexation of Crimea in violation of the international laws would not be condoned. That was the message which was generated to Russia. We would continue to communicate information message under the leadership of President Obama to Russia. And with regard to the DPRK, unless they change the present policies, there is no future for the public in the DPRK. We need to make the DPRK understand this, and pressure must be applied with cooperation between the international society to achieve this. And China holds the key to this. Japan. The United States and ROC must exercise its influence over China. With regard to the Asia-Pacific region as well as international society, there are various challenges, and the alliance must continue to be robust so that we can cooperate to resolve issues in Asia and in the world. Question: on the TPP, I'd like to ask the question to the two leaders. First, to Prime Minister Abe, regarding TPP negotiations and consultations are to continue. You have said. What are the remaining issues? And to what extent have you made progress at the Diet? With regard to the 5 sensitive items, they resolve that in this stage the elimination of tariffs would not be accepted. Do you believe under such circumstances an agreement can be reached? The next question to President Obama. Japan, with regard to rice and wheat and beef and pork, is very careful about reducing tariffs. What is your view on this for agreement between Japan and the United States? Agriculture, produce tariffs. What is the ideal resolution to this issue in your view, please? Prime Minister Abe, as interpreted. On the TPP, this is to create a major economic zone in the growth area of Asia. Basic human rights. rule of law, and democracy with countries that share these values. We will be creating new rules, and it is for this purpose. It is the 21st century type of economic zone which we wish to create. For the region as a whole, it's strategically very important. And we see eye to eye on this point between President Obama and myself. The remaining issues must be overcome very quickly and resolved so that TPP as a whole can be concluded. We should cooperate and exert further leadership. And that is the task that President Obama and I have, I believe. And from a broad perspective, along with President Obama, we want to make decisions and judgments. On the part of our country, there is this resolution adopted by the Diet. We will take the proper heed of this so that we will choose the path in the best interest of the country. But we also hope to conclude the talks in a favorable way. We want to try to achieve conclusion of the talks as a whole. President Obama, I will leave the details of the negotiations to the negotiators. I think it's fair to say that there are certain sectors of the Japanese economy, agricultural sectors. The auto sector, in which market access has been restricted historically. Certainly compared to the market access that Japan has had to US consumers. And those are all issues that people are all familiar with. And at some point have to be resolved. I believe that point is now. Prime Minister Abe, I think courageously, has recognized that although Japan continues to be one of the most powerful economies in the world, That over the last 2 decades its pace of growth and innovation had stalled, and that if in fact, Japan wanted to push forward in this new century, then reforms were going to have to take place. And he has initiated a number of those reforms. TPP is consistent with those reforms. And as Prime Minister Abe said, there's strategic importance to this, because what's happening now is we're shaping the economic environment for the fastest growing region in the world. Not just for this year or next year, but potentially for this decade and the next decade. And what rules apply whether we are operating in a fair and transparent way. Whether intellectual property is respected, whether markets are freely accessible, whether, in fact, countries are able to increase trade and as a consequence, increase jobs and prosperity for their people. A lot of that is going to depend on choices and decisions that we make right now. TPP is an opportunity for us to make that happen. Now, there are always political sensitivities in any kind of trade discussions. Prime Minister Abe has got to deal with his politics, I've got to deal with mine. And I think that Congress has passed, for example, recently a free trade agreement with the Republic of Korea and other countries around the world, and it's been based on notions of reciprocity and notions that if we tear down some of these existing barriers, that both countries can do better, both countries can grow. This is even more challenging because we have more countries involved. But my basis for doing this is because, ultimately, I think it's good for America to have an Asia-Pacific region where our companies can innovate, can compete. Can sell our goods and services freely, where our intellectual property is protected. And I think that's going to create more jobs in the United States. It's going to create greater prosperity in the United States. But it's a win-win situation, because I think the same is going to be true for Japan. The same is going to be true for Malaysia, the same is going to be true for Vietnam. The same is going to be true for the other countries that are in this discussion. But that means that short term, all of us have to move out of our comfort zones and not just expect. That we're going to get access to somebody else's market without providing access to our own. And it means that we have to sometimes push our constituencies beyond their current. Comfort levels, because ultimately it's going to deliver a greater good for all people. Mr. Carney, Julie Pace of the Associated Press has the final question. Question: I wanted to go back to the situation in Ukraine. You said that Russia is so far not abiding by the Geneva Agreement. But you appeared to indicate that you have not made a decision yet on levying further sanctions. So, first, can you just clarify whether you have or have not made that decision? And if you have not, what gives you confidence that holding? Off on further sanctions might change Russia's calculus. And couldn't they just be using the Geneva Agreement as a stalling tactic? as they weigh military options or try to influence the May Ukraine elections.